Clickbait title: Doing Self-Promotion Wrong. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Week I Review. My name is kubas-meyer, and today I want to talk about a short film, Real. This is arguably a conflict of interest because I am credited with all of the things you see on screen right now, but in a video I posted on this channel a couple of months ago, I said, and if it gets into a festival, I'm going to review it on this channel. And later that week, it was accepted into the Urban Action Showcase International Action Film Festival, despite the protestations of this guy who clearly has had a very tough creative life and who I feel genuinely sorry for, but in a largely sarcastic way. The original version of my response to him had a much harsher conclusion. But I think it's ridiculous that I should not be able to review my own movie. In fact, I don't think there is anyone on earth more qualified to do so than the guy who has seen it dozens and dozens of times across its various iterations as I edited it over the course of 3.5 years. It's a much better movie now than it was in 2015. I had seen it on screens ranging from 5 inches to 8 feet, each making for a radically different experience. And now I've seen it proper big as part of a UASIAFF shorts block, which was exciting. Though about 3 minutes into said block, I turned to JD Carr, who plays and also was the main fight choreographer, and said, "Life lesson, 90+% of short films are terrible." On this, that whiny baby commenter boy, and I agree. In that block, 1 was infuriatingly bad, 2 were incomprehensible and also not good, 1 felt like a rough cut for something that could have been fine, and then there was Real. Gerard Chamberlain, with whom I share several credits, was somewhat frustrated by the lack of quality. "It made me feel less special," he said, and me too. So it was nice when a couple of days ago I received an email letting me know that Real had been selected as a finalist in whatever category it was nominated in. We may not have won, but we're a step up from the bottom. Having seen it all those ways, I was actually a little bit disappointed seeing it big. I didn't like it as much. I still liked it, of course, but I felt like some of the flaws feel worse in a film, like in a theater, than they do on a TV. And much of that, I think, comes down to the budget in context with the competition. Even if our film was the best, it was also clearly the cheapest. The others had larger casts, more locations, CGI, etc. When it's taken on its own, watched on a laptop or a 50-something inch television, or even an 8-foot projection screen, you aren't aware of the limitations in the same way. I think that Real is a genuinely good-looking movie, one that is shot well and looks more expensive than it was, but it wasn't expensive. We submitted it to the cheap section of this festival, and it shows. Though it probably shows to me more than to most. I have a particular level of insight into the film and its somewhat rocky production. I can see what was and what is right from the opening moment. Real has an opening credit sequence. For 45 seconds, you can hear the voice of star co-writer, co-director Gerard as he gets increasingly frustrated with having to set up both the premise and the stakes of the following 15 minutes. This happens over black, punctuated by white text. And it bothers me. Anything under 16 minutes shouldn't have opening credits, and certainly not these opening credits. But at least you know what's going on. The first several cuts of Real were intentionally opaque. There was this grand overarching meta-narrative, and in fact this opening sequence replaces an entire scene that we shot at the Rocket to Venus bar in Baltimore. There were other characters and more story, including a couple of things that get called back later that are no longer callbacks.
Where is he?
What are you, Batman?
Where is he? You're not Batman. None of that story actually mattered, though. in the sense that the first time a character outright said what we were all fighting about was more than 5 minutes into a then 20-minute movie.
All I want is my footage. Why is that so difficult?
It's no longer a weird, dumb reveal that was a result of our refusal to have it be exposited into unrelated dialogue. Now, it's a reminder of the stakes, which is a good thing to have in a narrative. But even more than that, the fight in the scene was bad. Here are 2 seconds of it. For a movie that lives and dies by the quality of its action, that was unacceptable. No one would keep watching, and they would be right not to. So it went. And the movie's better for it, even if I don't like those opening credits. Reel is effectively a series of fight scenes. There are 3, the final of which takes up a full quarter of the runtime. We had the goal of making the best Baltimore-based martial arts short film with no clear sense of our competition, and may well win by default. For specific stylistic inspiration, we looked largely to The Raid, a film that is infinitely better than this one. The only action cinema I watched in the week leading up to our main production was the meth lab fight in that film, which is just straight up perfect. Like many non-Hollywood action movies, Reel lets the fights speak for themselves. Each fighter uses a different style of martial art based on one that the actor had experience with, and the camera steps back to let them do the thing that they were trained to do. It's rarely closer than a medium shot, and few shots are under multiple seconds in length, with the longer ones closer to a minute than not. At no point is there ever a cut on a strike. We shot with a constantly moving camera and no coverage. We moved from fight segment to fight segment, doing each at least a half dozen times until we had gotten it right, and then moving on. We had no choice. If the choreography and performances weren't up to snuff, the whole thing would have fallen apart, and we would have had nowhere to hide. So it's good that the fights worked. Other than the one that we cut. I have found that most people share my opinion that the final fight is the best of the film. It's the longest, the most technically impressive, and it's just a really cool sequence to watch. It's about a third of the way into it that Reel still grabs me after all these times and doesn't let go until the credits roll. But there are certain people who don't feel that way, who prefer the first fight, and it's worth unpacking why. Every fight in any movie has to tell a self-contained story. It's about overcoming the odds, something that must be presented in actions before words. And for the latter 2 fights in Reel, this is purely the case. The broader narrative, such that it is, largely stops while people trade blows. The first fight with the producer, full disclosure, me, de-emphasizes the action story. It is more concerned with the characters than the moves they're making. Neither of these approaches is inherently better than the other, but Reel benefits from having both. Being the actual introduction to our protagonist, it is critical that this first fight establishes his character. Afterwards, again, it's under 16 minutes. At some point, you just need to worry about punching in a movie whose logo is a fist going through a film reel. The constant push forward, which is game-like in a sense, results in a short film that feels even shorter. There are a couple of minutes here and there to catch your breath, but it's go, go, go enough that you could just get swept up in it. Helped greatly by an original soundtrack by Chase Hawley and Riley Smith that works brilliantly within the movie, but is also just really good and something I enjoy listening to. One of the songs is my ringtone. Reel is never boring. It doesn't give you a reason to turn away or pull out your phone. By the time you really stop to think about it, it's over. And you think, yeah, that was fun. And ultimately, that is what matters. And that is what we learned in the process of coming to the final cut. We had all these ideas for what everything meant and would mean. We tried for literally years to make them work. But the movie that we had actually shot was something different than what we understood. And eventually we accepted that. And we made something that I can be and am proud of. 7.1 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this particularly indulgent video. I know that most people cannot see Reel unless they backed Kickstarter or happen to be at that screening. We intend to make it more broadly available, but we have to hear back from some other festivals first. Anyway, if you like this video, that's great. If not, I'm sorry. I hope to see you next week.